better get going. I need to pick up a few things, and then I'm going to try to beat the kids home from school.
Yeah, me too. I have to.
Oh, hang on just a sec. Oh, hi, Cameron. Yeah, I'm going to be home in a few minutes. Hey, you're home early. Of course you can go to Blake's house, but you do have to clean up your room. We have company coming over tonight. Yeah, I know it's going to take some time. I've been after you for over a week now. Okay. I'll do it this time. All right. Have fun. Love you, hon. Mwah. What are you looking at me like that for?
I can't believe you just said that.
Said what?
I'll clean up your room for you. Don't worry about it. Go have fun.
Well, you know, he's just a kid. They don't clean up their rooms real well anyway. What?
I was just thinking.
About what?
I was just feeling sorry for Cameron's future wife.
Oh. Never thought about it that way.
Welcome to Boundaries with Kids. In the opening scenario, Cameron's mom learned a valuable lesson. We often parent in the present without thinking about the future. We usually just deal with the problems at hand. Making it through an afternoon without wanting to send our children to an 8-year camp in Alaska seems like a huge accomplishment. But one goal of parenting is to keep an eye on the future. Remember, we're raising our children to be responsible adults.
The issue in any parenting situation is this. Is what you're doing being done on purpose? Or are you doing it from some reasons that you don't think about, such as your childhood, or the need of the moment, or your fears, or your own personality? For example, Allison was by nature a helper, and so she gladly helped her son. But remember that parenting has to do with more than the present. You're parenting your child for the future. A person's character is a person's destiny.
We want to help you help your children develop the character that will lead them into the life that God created them to have. And healthy boundaries can go far in developing that character. A boundary is a property line that defines a person. It defines where one person ends and someone else begins. If we know where a person's boundaries are, we can know that we can expect this person to take control of himself or herself. We can require responsibility in regard to feelings, behaviors, and attitudes.
A child needs to know where she begins and she ends. She needs to know what she needs to take responsibility for and what she does not need to take responsibility for. If she grows up in relationships where she's confused about her own boundaries, what she's responsible for, and about others' boundaries, what they are responsible for, she doesn't develop the self-control that will enable her to steer through life successfully. But when boundaries are clear, children develop a well-defined sense of who they are and what they're responsible for, the ability to choose, the understanding that if they choose well, things will go well, and if they choose poorly, they will suffer, and the possibility of true love based on freedom. Self-control, responsibility, freedom, love. What could be a better outcome of parenting than that?
But how does that happen? In our view, the parent or caretaker role consists of 3 main functions, that of guardian, manager, and source. Now, a guardian is legally responsible for a child, and in that capacity protects and preserves the child. More often than not, in their role as guardian, parents use boundaries to keep their child safe, growing, and healthy. They set limits to freedom, and then they enforce those limits for the child's protection. Through this process, the child internalizes the limits as wisdom and slowly begins to be able to take care of herself. A parent serves as a guardian, for instance, by making sure that the child does not engage in behavior which would endanger the child. Parents say yes to vaccinations and no to playing in the traffic, or unhealthy food, or drugs, or illicit sex.
Now, a manager makes sure that things get done and that goals are reached and demands and expectations are met. See, children aren't born with self-discipline. Therefore, they have to have other discipline. And boundaries play an important part in managing. Setting limits and requiring the child to take ownership, which is embracing the problem as his own, and responsibility, which is taking care of what he's embraced, entail a clear understanding of boundaries. For instance, to help a child become a learner, parents manage the process of getting homework done. They set the standards and enforce it with positive and negative consequences and correction and encouragement and the like.
Parents are the source of all good things, material and immaterial, for a child. They're the bridge to the outside world of resources that actually sustain life. And in both the giving and the receiving of resources, boundaries play an important role. In the beginning, parents are the source. They progressively give children the independence to obtain what they need on their own after that. Boundaries help structure the resources that play an important role in parenting. To make sure that the child develops well, the parent serves as source by providing all the resources that are needed for growth. Resources such as food, security, love, exposure to opportunities, things like sports equipment, social circles, and even schools.
Boundaries facilitate the process of having the child internalize things that were external to him. Things like feeling the need or motivation to take responsibility for himself, or planning and taking the time to act responsibly, or developing the skills necessary to act responsibly. What was once external becomes internal. As you take a stance of good, clear boundaries with children, they have a better chance of gaining the motivation and the need and the skill and the plan to live a loving, responsible, righteous, and successful life unto God and others. And this is really what character is all about. And in the next video clip, we'll take a closer look at the kind of character we want to develop in our children.
When Allison visualized Cameron's marriage, she could see that responsibility for oneself was an important quality to build into her child. She changed her focus from dealing with the immediate moment to thinking about long-term character development. What kind of person was she teaching Cameron to be?
Surely we want our children to be responsible, but often we don't have a very clear picture of the character that we're trying to build. In dealing with children, we're sometimes trying to get through the day or the next hour. But if we could look ahead to the person we're trying to develop, then we could get a handle on some of the immediate parenting problems.
It is essential to realize that when you get Johnny to do his homework, the issue is not just getting that assignment done. It's about the possibility of success or failure of his marriage and even his career. That's why we're going to give you 8 qualities that we consider important to adult functioning. Qualities in which boundaries play an essential developmental role.
Of the 3 great virtues, faith, hope, and love, the Apostle Paul wrote, the greatest of these is love. Now, most parents would say that they want their children to be loving, and loving people recognize that the world just doesn't revolve around them. Loving people are able to control their impulses. Loving people respect the boundaries of others, and loving people set boundaries for themselves so that they are responsible people whose actions become loving.
Being responsible involves taking ownership of your life. Now, ownership is to truly possess your life and to know that you are accountable for your life to God and to others. Responsibility, therefore, includes other things than just duty or obligations, or reliability and dependability, or just getting the job done. Truly responsible people also take ownership of many other things. Let me give you a list. Their feelings, attitudes, behaviors, choices, limits, talents, thoughts, desires, values, and our loves. These are things which our boundaries define and protect. A responsible person says, my feelings are my problem, or my attitude is my problem. Or unlike Adam and Eve in the garden who blamed someone else, the responsible person instead says, I made me do it. Now, with this understanding and ownership, self-control can develop. We shall all give an account to God for our lives, and He will hold us responsible for what we did with our talents, our resources, our relationships, our time, and our actions.
People with healthy character are free people. And this is in sharp contrast to today's popular victim sort of mentality. These free people realize that they can act rather than to remain passive in a situation. They realize they have choices and they can take control of their lives. Children raised with good boundaries learn that they're not only responsible for their lives, but also free to live their lives any way they choose to, as long as they take responsibility for their choices.
A normal part of human behavior is to initiate things. Being created in the image of God is being created with the ability to begin something. A child needs to be required to initiate. That skill is an important aspect of boundary training. Several years ago, I was with a friend of mine who had a 10-year-old son. Now, while we were talking, Davy came in several times complaining of nothing to do, wanting his mom to design playtime for him. Knowing that he had all of the resources he needed, she looked at him and said, "Davy, you are responsible for your own fun." Not long after that, he found a friend to come over and play.
Someone once said, reality is a tough place to live, but it's the only place to get a good steak. Now, while reality can be tough to handle, it is also where the good things of life reside as well. The character that creates the life that works must have a healthy respect for reality. Now, by reality, we mean experiencing the consequences of our actions in the real world. Mature adults know that, for the most part, if they do good, good things will happen. If they do nothing or do bad, then bad things will happen. And this dual respect for the positive and the negative sides of reality is often referred to as wisdom.
Have you ever run into a person you haven't seen in some time and her life is much better than it was before? Perhaps someone's lost 60 pounds or the black sheep is turned around. A person with a history of heartbreak finds a lasting relationship. A person moves across the country with nothing and no one and creates a life for herself. Few things inspire us like a story of a person's growing and overcoming some difficult obstacle, especially in our own character. The ability to grow is a character issue. Good parenting can help a child develop character that faces the obstacles of life within an orientation towards growth. It includes developing abilities and gaining knowledge, as well as facing negative things about oneself that need changing. Boundaries help children see what is expected of them and how they need to grow to meet those expectations. Parents need to require their children to do the changing instead of trying to get reality to change.
A less than honest person is somewhere between a pain and a catastrophe. Dishonesty fuels betrayal, and it blocks intimacy, and it prevents growth. To the extent that a person is able and willing to be honest, he can grow. And honesty begins with parents who model it and require it from their children and provide them with a safe environment in which to be honest. Boundaries play a key role in building honesty because boundaries require the truth. Boundaries also give the safety of known consequences for failure. Children can handle the known logical consequences of their mistakes much better than they can handle relational consequences like anger and guilt and shame and condemnation or even abandonment.
The two most important questions that anyone has to answer are, am I God or not? And then, if I'm not God, who is? The answers to these two questions govern every direction of a person's life. Being grounded in God gives direction and meaning to human existence, allowing people to transcend life, their problems, their own limitations and mistakes, and other people's sins against them. Without an orientation to transcend the realities of this life and touch the realities of God, people are very limited. People who have the ability, though, to transcend themselves go beyond their own existence to the reality of others, of God, of the virtues that they hold more important than themselves, and their own immediate happiness. In short, because they realize that life is bigger than they are, they become bigger than they are at any given moment to meet its demands. Humility makes them larger than they were.
Seeing character building as a major task of parenting can be overwhelming. It's certainly easier to manage the moment or do what comes naturally. But the need is greater and it's higher. As we said earlier, a child's character will determine much of the course his life takes. To develop a child of good character, we have to be parents of good character. Put differently, In order to develop boundaries in our children, we have to have boundaries. And that's the subject of our next session. We'll see you then.